All right. Hello, everyone. It's a Thursday and the 13th of February. We are in the middle of the Chennai Storytelling Festival, and I am extremely happy to be here. And of course, needless to mention, Eric, thank you so much for hosting this, an amalgamation of people from across the world with similar interest, building cohesivity, and a culture globally of telling, sharing, nurturing stories. So, thank you for that. So, I would like to begin this session with a bit of a awareness practice. Before I go ahead, one of the things is like the pamphlet or the flyer suggested, I would request each of us to have an open mind of keeping their videos on. Just like Eric reassured right now, I think while recording, no tile or no video is going to be visible except mine. So that's good. That's a plus. And the second is this is a this workshop is a storytelling with movement. We will be moving, but not to worry. I'm not going to be asking you to get off your chairs and dance. I wish we could do that at some point, but today, being the first workshop, and I would really like to get my theme across in the most subtle, non interfering, but effective way across to all of you. So it's not going to be a force to move, but yes, I would definitely encourage all to use your bodies as you participate in this workshop. Because this is a workshop, obviously, we need to do some work. We need to do probably some practices together. But having said that, if any of this, of any of the things is not going or connecting with you, please feel free to kind of, sit that one out. And that's okay. Right. Okay. All right, so let's begin with a very simple awareness practice. I'm going to request all of you to just shut your eyelids, keep your eyes closed for a while as you listen to my voice. Thank you so much. And as you're doing this, which part of your body is moving right now? It could be your toes, your fingers, your chest, abdomen. Let's notice these parts. Simple notice. Which are the parts of our bodies that is bearing our weight right now, our body weight? The seating muscles, glutes, the hip, legs, ankle, toes, heel, or maybe for some, even the thighs. Let's notice this. Which parts of our bodies are feeling a bit lazy right now? Which are those parts which just don't want to move? Notice these parts and make those subtle movements. Probably just shift the side of how you're sitting, change the position of your elbow, make a slight change. Very good. It's wonderful. Now, slowly, with a lot of connection, let's bring in awareness to the back of our neck, running down to our spine, to your seated muscles, like you're comfortable. And then I welcome you all back to this room, rolling your shoulders, opening your eyes, and coming back to witness this workshop with me. Hello, welcome back, everyone. So when we hear or when I say communicating with movements or using the body's language to express, what are your thoughts? Let's take a second and take some thoughts. Feel free to unmute and talk about what are the things that come up for you. When I say communicating with movement or using the body's language to express, what are a few thoughts that come? Anybody? Oh,
Well,
yes,
Use
Amy.
body language, and sometimes body language is intentional, sometimes it's not intentional.
Right,
Sometimes we don't even know what we're expressing.
right.
I'll be right back.
All
so
right. Okay. Yes, Eileen. Yeah.
we use our hands. I
Use a
notice
hand.
you use your hands. Yes. I can't not use my hands.
Absolutely. Yes. Use of hands. Yes. Anything else other than just using hands? When you say expressing with our bodies, what comes up for you? Something more specific? Jeff, anything specific? No? Okay. Anybody else? All right. So let's go with the use of hands and the use of the body language, like just what Eric said. Why do we use our hands to convey our thoughts?
Did you say why do we use our hands?
Why the hands? To
Well,
convey what?
mm, in
Mm,
storytelling, especially and in public speaking, we say to give emphasis
mm-hmm. Okay.
and also to illustrate.
Suggest.
To illustrate, to
To
show,
illustrate.
like I'm holding a ball and it was a
Mm.
big ball.
Yeah,
So there's the emphasis and there's the illustration.
absolutely. Right. Thanks, Eric. That
Hmm.
kind of went way forward in my workshop today. But yes, so that's something that we will address, emphasis. But coming back to acknowledging movement while we communicate, a lot of the time we use our hands, just like Aileen said, we use our hands to emphasize a topic or what we are saying. And we concentrate or we get stuck by, or we limit it to gestures, right? We limit it to gesturing. Something like if you are in a foreign land to get your way through, one of the things that you can use your body effectively is to say, right? A lot of the body and its gestures are used with the capacity to make meaning out of it, the full meaning. Are you with me? Right? Many times we use our hands, just like the way that I'm doing right now, to create an emphasis and attract the audience to what I want to say, right? Attract the audience to what is the point that I want to make, emphasizing on my thought, right? However, today we are going to pulse through a few deeper aspects, right? So we're going to pulse through the aspects of movement and using our bodies to tell, to narrate with the intention of enhancing the experience of course, telling and narrating stories, but also listening and connecting, right? Using our bodies to not only emphatically telling, but also understanding how it connects or how it brings a cohesivity to listening and connectedness. All right. So I'm just going to try something and I'm just going to ask probably a few of you to participate. For the next 2 minutes, I'm going to be talking a bit about myself. Yeah. However, I would request you to pay close attention to to everything. Yeah, just a keen eye is all I'm asking right now. Okay, all right. Okay, so I am Smita Rajan. I live in Mumbai, and I have two wonderful daughters who are my first story listeners. Professionally, I practice as an integrative therapist and I'm a dance movement therapy practitioner. I have also co-founded an organization called Tunai, which means trust in Tamil, which works in the area of trauma, awareness, and reproductive mental health. My two story bearers in my life are my grandfather and my mom. My grandfather brought stories of culture to me, and my mom brought in stories of life, um, success, and they both are definitely the story bearers of my life. All right. At this point, I'm just going to ask you, how was my breath as I was talking to you? Any observations? Was I holding my breath? Was I letting it off? Was I very calm? Was my shoulder down? Any observations? See anybody with their tile on, so I'm just going to ask Aileen to help me out, or Sweetie. None of them
You're
have their tile
calm,
on.
I think.
Sorry? Can you repeat?
You're calm.
Okay, I'm calm,
You're
but
so calm. Yes.
yes, I'm calm. And how do you get that?
With
How
your
do you
voice
know I'm not going like
modulation.
this?
Yeah,
How do you,
yes. You're
how do you
not
know I'm not
rushed.
going like, yeah?
So from your voice modulation and your
Voice
body
modulation.
language.
Absolutely. So David says that he was paying attention to my hands and eyes. Okay, not to my breath. Okay, which was exactly. So what parts of my body did I move or use to emphasize? Of course, my hands. Like Sweetie said, my voice. But which part of my this long monologue made a connection with you? What has stayed with you? You can even shut your eyes and just let me know a few words or a few visuals.
You had a slight smile when you were speaking. It was very
Smile.
pleasant.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, thank you, Eileen. And David says your gesture, hands to indicate mother and father. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Um, uh, the tone you use that phrase. Uh-huh. Okay. All right. All right. So the word tunai, okay, that registered, the word tunai registered. Tunai means in Tamil, tunai means support. So that registers. Okay, right. So thank you. Thank you so much, everybody, to participate via chat and with your voices. A big part of communicating what I would like you to believe, calmness, stems from the fact of how I want to regulate and control my breath, my movement, my voice while I tell a story. This, as storytellers, we know and we build on. But the most curious part is, how does my agitation not mirror in your emotion? Don't worry about it. These are two things that we're going to do today in this workshop. By the end of this workshop today, my aim is that at least some of us or many will be tempted to or will be curious to learn about the motion emotion connectedness. And number two, the rasa effect, right? I'll come to each one of it. But the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the motion and emotion connectedness, right? These are the two things that we would really want to work with in this workshop. Coming to the motion emotion effects. What does Newton's law say about every action? Newton's law says every action has a
Reaction.
absolutely. Thanks, Aileen. Every action has an equal and opposite, yeah, reaction, right? I'm just going to give an addendum to this. Add on a little bit that every action creates an emotional connectedness. Meaning, when I, as a narrator, use my body with movement, action, intonation, features, I create an emotional stir in you to connect with my thoughts, my story, right? This is the connection between the motion and emotion. So here's a mind body secret. When the brain focuses its full attention on something, a lot of you have put this in your chat, right? When the brain focuses on its full attention on something, it filters out all information that it does not already know. So, when I was talking about myself, you didn't know me. You don't know what I do. But what stayed with you was the connection you made with my story bearers, the hands, my features, my calmness. It had nothing to do with the data that I was talking to you, but you got the emotion right. You got it that I come from a space that whatever I do, but I'm making a contact, right? The actions spoke louder than words. It stayed with you first. You probably are going to remember me later on with what I said, but the action spoke louder than my words, right? And that's what happens when we talk about movement in storytelling. One of the reasons why just going to repeat that thought. It's science, right? Where it says it's called a mind. I'm just calling it as a mind body secret, but this is science. When I say that the brain focuses its full attention on something, but it filters out things where it does not make any relevance to, which it does not already know, which is the basis of many psychoanalytical tests, right? The story tests that we see, that's the basis, which is why people send these, we see these amazing stories on the internet, right? Only 5 people can observe who is the killer. Listen to the story and find out who is the one who is the mole. We have these psychometric psychoanalytical tests that run. So that is the basis of how the brain works in action, creating a connectedness with action, which is also why we love a twist in the tail, right? Because your body and your brain is not prepared for a change. So something that happens which you're not ready for is a twist in the tail. You don't just take it up as, it's just a story that went on, right? When there is a twist, you say, interesting, right? So that's your body's way of connecting you emotionally with the story that you are able to hear, right? So when I say bird, or when I say, I don't have to use the word small bird because my eyes, my movement is suggesting it to you. That can be off. And I need not say dense forest because because I'm feeling the emotion, my action is connected and invokes the same emotion that I would like to. All right. So we're going to do this bit of, let's learn this and break this down very simply. When I say micro movements, what does it read? What do you interpret from when I say micro movements? The phrase itself, micro movements.
Small.
Small. Absolutely right. Small and subtle. Thanks, Ramya. Small, subtle movements. These micro movements, tiny gestures, yeah, we're going to come to that. Tiny, small, subtle. This is the use of my voice, my breath. Suppose I said something like bird, but if I say bird, the big bird, right? Makes sense. But when I say bird, there is a, you're making a connection there. But when I say bird, I open myself up. It just shows and suggests that I am showing something probably as big as a big eagle or a vulture or so on and so forth, right? When I say micro movements, what I really mean is the listener can visualize my narration through my voice, my breath control, my eyes, and the amount of times I am making a touch with my body, or I am doing this, reaching out to the other person virtually, right? So when I say micro movements, it means my voice, my breath control, my eyes, and the touching. When I say macro movements, right? So, which is why somebody said tiny gestures. Sherry, yes. The word gestures itself is macro because it indicates the need for communicating. Just like what I said at the beginning of the workshop or when we started, we gesture to suggest something in a new country when we don't know the language. We gesture, how do I call you? Can you come? Where can I eat? Where is the train station? Right? So gestures are macro movements of the body. When we use gestures and voice modulation, which we use a lot when we are characterizing or dramatizing, we call those as macro movements, right? Now, why do we need to learn, or why am I talking about micro and macro movements? They are very general. They are what's the word that I'm looking for? They are pretty organic for a storyteller or for a person to kind of witness as they are telling a story. The truth of the matter is that the human brain does not think in abstracts, right? We visualize. So when I'm listening to Aileen talking to me about what made a connection with her, I am making a visual imagery of when she says my hands, my eyes, right? I'm able to go back and visualize myself. Similarly, when we use micro and macro movements in the proper balance, we're able to create a connectedness with our listeners. A balance of both is required for generating an action emotion connection, the cohesivity, the connectedness. All right. So now I'm going to be demonstrating this, the micro and macro movements. And all I'm asking people who have joined or who can see me in the tile or who are not even on camera, that's okay. If you can just see me and point out the micro and macro movements, right? And we'll probably try to one of two of you who could volunteer to just tell a simple story and try to use your body's movement to tell a simple story. But I'm just going to try something, and it's a simple story. All right. And this is the story about the bird that pleased the gods. Probably you must have heard different versions of it. But today I'm going to be telling you about the bird that pleased the gods. A little tiny bird that lived in a huge big forest. All of the animals in the forest didn't even know the bird. But every morning, she used to take the effort to always wish good morning all the animals that she came across. Tweak, 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 she used to say. One day, a very sunny, hot day, there was a fire in the forest. And you know that when there is a forest fire, all of the animals are running. There's a stampede. The animals are trying to get away to a safer space, probably to a higher ground. They want to get away from the heat, from the fire, because they all want to survive. But this little bird, she thought otherwise. What if I could put off the fire, she said. So with her little feathers, she took upon herself to go to the little pond there, drench her wings, and lift it up and fly to the place where there was fire and struck herself like this so that all the droplets fell. And then again she went, again she dipped her feathers, again she rose up, again she flew, and again all of the drops fell. And again she went, and again she. All of the animals said, "Are you making a difference? Little bird, save yourself, run away. Your wings are going to get all burned." The bird said, "No, this is something that I have to do. I have to save my home." And then she kept at it. Looking at her dedication, her bravery, the gods felt so bad, slightly ashamed. And they thought, in front of this little bird's bravery and her steadfastness, is there nothing that we can do? And then, just like the gods' work, down came a lot of rain, setting all the flames to rest. Then the bird sat down and rested. And all the animals now came to thank her. Yeah, she became a bit popular. And everybody wished her good morning from that day onwards. It's a story we've all heard with many, many versions of it, right? Thanks. Right? This is a story we've all heard with different versions of it, of how the bird struggles or how the bird has done its job and the act of bravery and all of that. Can anybody tell me about the micro and the macro movements? And I'm just going to rephrase or again repeat. Thanks, Evie. I'm just going to repeat what the micro parts are. The micro are the voice, breath, eyes, and the touch. Macro are the gestures and the modulation, right? I really want to hear, and I have really practiced this to say it in the way exactly I want to be told. I want it to be told for the sake of the workshop. Of course, there are different ways of saying it. Yes, Ailey, go for it.
I really enjoyed the way you described the forest. Your the movement that you did. It was very sweet. I tell stories with forests in them, and I'm going to incorporate that. It just felt really nice. And I'm not doing it right. How did you I'm exaggerating it. Oh, okay. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, right? So the idea of me making that action was only to evoke the thought that it was a self-contained unit.
Okay.
Everybody there was in some way making a difference to each other. You know, it was a home because that's what the story is about. When I ended it and I said that she wanted to save her home, you know,
Yes.
right? So that's what.
Yes.
So what was your feeling or emotion towards that little bird or towards the gods? What emotion came up for you? What feeling came up for you?
Hi, Smita. Yeah, so the feeling that came up for me, well, it's a story that I love, and I love the way you told it, is the compassion of the little bird. So I was very admiring of the bird's kindness
Kindness.
and wanting to put out the fire for the benefit of all of the forest creatures. But if I go back to what your previous question was about macro and micro movements, I agree. Your use of the hands, for example, to create the forest. But it wasn't just the size of your gesture, the macro gesture, to indicate the dense, large forest. It was also how definitely you did that gesture. So it wasn't just big. It was, I can't remember. It was a very definite almost a frozen image of your hand just for a split second, which was more than just an emphasis. It was an emphasis, and it gave us a very powerful
Visual
image. Yeah.
Yes, that's
And
exactly what I'm
when you
going
say the image, for me, it's not only visual; it's also very physical, very kinesthetic. So I know you're a dancer, but it's that sense of the energy with which you make that image doesn't just create a mental image in me; it creates a physical sensation, or even a physical embodied image.
Yeah. Thank you, David. That was so amazing because that's exactly what I was going for. Visualizing using movement is so profound as a narrator to reach out to your listeners, to your audience across all spectrum of age. And this is something that we can practice, or this is something that we can use very simply. Exactly. I'm just going with what Aileen said, the forest, right? So can we all just try, because now that we know the story, you know the start and the end. So I'm going to request everybody whose cameras are on or even otherwise, whatever you're comfortable, to actually use your own bodies to talk about the forest. So how would you talk about the forest? If this was my way of talking about the forest, how is it going to be for you? What are the micro and macro movements? Why don't you give it a try? I have Aileen, Anise, Sweetie on my tile. Yeah, I'm just going to look at the three of you. Right, thank you. Now let's try that with the kind of forest that you would visualize, or you are trying to act out, or you are moving to show. What is the kind of forest? A dense, big one. Now try to use the breath as you are describing this in movement. Probably just say forest in your head and see how that works. With your breath. Repeat the same action, but try it with a bit of breath connectedness. Yes,
Didn't
Ani.
sort of didn't get that there. What exactly would you mean when you
I said you're moving, your gesture was this way, right? Your movement was this way, right? I'm just saying that try to visualize, taking a cue from what David said, visualize it, connect the movement with your breathing pattern. See if you're able to make a connection. Forest, forest. You know, you can say that in your head, but the way that your body moves, yeah.
Forest.
Absolutely. Forest. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Yeah. That seems like a big, dense forest. Or a forest that one can get lost, David. Right? All right. The way that the whole movement was. Yeah. So it comes across to me, Anis's forest was more like a lot of activities happening. And the activity is more important than the forest. Whereas Sweetie's forest was more like forest. I don't even know how many trees are there, but there is a forest. Yeah. Different ideas of making a connection with your own movements. But the theme is also the same, but the way I'm interpreting it is so different, right? And this is what I was talking about when we talk about the motion and emotion connection, right? So if there's one thing that one needs to take away, this is probably that I would really like you to take away, the motion and emotion connection, right? Okay, so any thoughts until now, or should we move on? Anybody would like to share something or something that worked or did not work, or shall we go ahead with the next part of the workshop? Yes, David, go ahead, please.
It kind of follows on from everything you're saying about, as I mentioned about the definiteness of the gesture, but also something I learned. I don't know if you've come across rakugo storytelling, which is a traditional form of storytelling from Japan,
Okay.
and it's very stylized. So the movements are very small.
Mm.
So you could almost say micro, but it's the control and the definiteness of the movements that make it more powerful. So the typical in the rakugo story is there's two characters, and the storyteller sits on the stage and we'll have a conversation. We'll go, so would you like to buy a bowl of noodles? Ah, yes, noodles. So they're just looking from side to side with very small movements, but it's not the size of the gesture, it's the quality of how definite that gesture is that gives it the power. So even though they're sitting in a theatre, they fill the theatre with, and I think it's the same with Indian dance.
Absolutely.
Those small movements of the fingers, it's not just the size, it's the detail and what's the word I'm looking for? The precision of those movements. I don't know. What do you think?
Absolutely, yes. In fact, that's very well said. Indian dancing does have this, wherein there are two characters and there's one person playing, and we have a lot of, going here and making a conversation, coming here, and it could be a man and a woman, and the whole body language is different, right? So these are the little details that happen in Indian art form. However, which is also what I'm coming to, the Natya Shastra. We're just going to be talking about that in the next part. The Natya Shastra has, we call that Angikam, or the body, right? Angas. Angas means the parts of the body in Sanskrit. What we really talking about, these are jargons, but however, when we talk about the micro macro movements, a lot has been taken from the Natya Shastra. So that's a very good catch, David, of course. There is a uniqueness for every presenter to do or recite even a very normal piece of dance, right? So there is a style, there is a method, and those are very set compartments, right? However, even in those set compartments, there are beautiful variations. No two people can make the same connection, then do the same dance the same way that a person delivers it. That's exactly how I picked up this whole aspect. A lot of the material from the workshop today is from one of these books that I have really enjoyed reading in the past years. It's called Wired for Story, and I love the way, I'll just get the name of the author, probably you all will know it. uh, the way she makes a connection of how the mind interprets what it sees or what is the action is wonderful. And this is exactly what I was going for. So yes, absolutely. I concur with whatever you're saying, David. Yes. So this is the connection that we're trying to make. Absolutely, yes. Thanks. That was amazing. Anything else? Any thoughts? All right. Yes.
I don't want to dominate, but I also think about the way we tell stories here on Zoom is so interesting compared to where we're telling a story to 300 people in a hall. Obviously, size does make a big difference. And
Absolutely.
what we do here with the very small action, it was a huge elephant. But if you're in the person, it's like a tiny elephant because I'm really doing that, But it's all scaled to, if it's TV or video or a big space. And of course, I would stand up and be much more expressive with a large group of children than I would be one-to-one with an adult listener.
Absolutely. And this is amazing. In fact, had this been an in-person session, not that I'm complaining, but we would be going for something called a whole-bodied movement while telling a story, because that is something that I have also seen that, it's a struggle for many using the entire body to tell a story or participate in the storytelling, which is why I restricted to micro and macro movements. But the typical idea is to talk about a whole bodied expression. How does the body participate in telling the story? Is not only through the gestures or the use of hands, but even the legs. Like, for example, had I told about the same story, had I wanted to talk about a whole bodied expression, I would probably use a lot of my lower body as well to talk about the speed of fire. I would probably have used the use of the trunk and the elephant running, making it maybe the thumping sound, right? So, why does this need to happen? When the listener participates with the visualization that is being done with our bodies, they are able to come out of the abstractness of the story and actually visualize the entire thing happening. But it's all here. It's through my eyes. And that's a very powerful feeling. In a way, responsibility and powerful. Yeah. But that's what I would have gone for, a whole bodied expression if it was, But if I were telling a story for somebody who is chair-bound or an adult, I would probably use very subtle movements, not to, especially if I'm using it in a therapy setting, which I do a lot of times. I was just sharing it with Sweetie here is I would probably be much more subtler and use more of my micro movements. So choose your audience is what I'm saying. So if I'm dealing with a patient who is having or coming in for an anxiety, I probably wouldn't want to do the same story like this. I probably wouldn't want to go all horizontal and up and down. Probably would stick with micro movements. But that capacity to kind of modulate and play with how you use your body, your voice, your breath, the way I brought calmness, like what Sweetie was talking about. Although in my body right now, I am of course going, but if I can bring in a sense of calm that comes with a set with some practice and with my intention to not, bring out that part. So that comes with a bit of practice, using the micro and the macro aspects in our day-to-day storytelling or even in communication. Right. And I've seen this many times that people, when, especially the self-introduction part, they struggle a lot to make a connection with what they are talking about themselves and with their bodies. So I've seen people who have a disconnect. So when they say things about themselves, but it's like they're talking about somebody else, right? But when they use their bodies and they are able to make a connection, it immediately you're like, oh yeah, this one's making some sense. Like, yeah, Anis, you have something to share?
I just have a question here. So I'm just curious if you have any input on this as to whether your movement or your body language as you talk, your actions, do they follow your thought or your thought follows your movements? Because sometimes, like when you just feel free, for me, in many situations, I feel like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to talk. I'm stuck. But then you just try to get your body working and then it follows. So I'm just curious here, just out of curiosity, if you have any input there as to whether the thought follows the actions or the actions follow.
Such a wonderful question, Anis. Wonderful question. If I have to give you an image, I would say it's a circle.
Okay.
It's this leading to that and that leading to this.
Mhm.
And there is no start point. So when I'm talking about the motion and emotion connectedness, I am also going to be talking about the emotion and motion connectedness. And I am going to encourage a few of us to do a bit of probably something a little out of the box, but let's try, making a disconnectedness and see how that feels. But then that's for the later. But yes, in answer to your question very crisply, it works both ways and it's like a circle. And that's exactly how it's even taught. That's exactly how it's taught. Why am I talking about how it's being taught? Because now the science behind the neuroscience explains the psychology has stepped so much further in body-based methods when storytelling has become so powerful, storytelling and therapeutic storytelling, where the body participation evokes the emotion, calms the person down, or builds up the creativity that is needed, right? So it is all the way that how we use or we choose to use it with the audience. So if you're going to be working, like what David said, working with children, I probably would go the way that we just spoke about, the motion emotion. But if I'm going to be talking to an adult, especially in a therapeutic setting or in a official setting, right, and I have experience doing that, is I probably would go from thoughts generated actions. Yeah. And I do realize that it comes easily for some, but with practice, I think a whole bodied, embodied storytelling is possible.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anise. Excellent question. And I enjoyed answering that.
Smita, can you explain generated action?
Did I say generated action? I said whole bodied. Yeah. Your mic is not on. Sorry, David. I didn't get.
Sorry. No, I meant I missed the phrase you used to talk about when you're working on a small scale with a one-to-one and an adult in a therapeutic session. You
Yes.
used a term about generated or something like that.
Yeah. I would probably start with talking about your thoughts and then building it into an action, thoughts generating the action rather than the other way around, is what I
Thank
said.
you.
It depends, and you choose this with practice with your audience. All right, that was some excellent sharing. Thank you for that. And I'm just going to move on to the next part of what I'm calling as the rasa effect. Right? David, you have something to share? No, all right. So let's move on with the rasa effect. So I see a lot of people here who already have, amazing experience in storytelling and creative arts. But does rasa, R-A-S-A, does it ring a bell? What does it mean when I say rasa? Anybody? No. Rasa, no.
It feels more towards the essence.
Navarasam in Tamil we do.
Yes.
Navarasam.
Yes, absolutely. I can't see you.
I'm Sweetie here.
Yeah, hi, sweetie. Yes. Yes, Navarasam, we say it in Tamil. Yes, but when I say rasa, Navarasa has got the 9, and we'll be talking about that. So, okay, no problem. I'm just going to talk about what rasa is. Rasa, very simply put, but a wonderful concept from the Natya Shastra. The Natya Shastra itself is, there are 4 Vedas. It is looked as the 6th textbook of everything that is creative: music, dance, story, bards, theater, plays, so on and so forth, and different every aspect, right from stage to costumes to rhythm to movement to breath to parts to there's it's just like a big volume of things written. Not going into detail, but I've borrowed this particular topic, the rasa effect, uh, but of course, it's got a bit of science backed by it. When I say rasa, what I really mean is aesthetic, the ras, or the, or to simply place it, it is the emotion that is evoked. I'm just going to use Anisa's name because she's on my tile. So it is the emotion that is evoked in Anise as she is witnessing me. And this emotion right now is suggested, is induced, is aroused in her by my expression, my narration, right? So, whatever I would like Anise to experience, the aesthetic is rasa, right? Is everyone with me? Right? So, Eric, at this point, can we have the the pages, please?
Yes, just one moment.
Yeah, that's okay.
Is that it? Is that one of them?
Yes, this is the one. Yeah. It is to do with the essence. Absolutely, yes. Yeah, we just said that. So this is Bharata Muni, okay, the one who wrote the Natya Shastra, or at least was suggested to do so. And he talks about the Navarasas, exactly like what Sweetie was talking about, the Navarasas, right? So the story goes that the rasas is an effect of emotion. It is an effect of the emotion. It is an effect of the emotion, right? Which is why it is a felt experience. All right. So if there is this emotion, there's an effect of emotion, which is a felt experience, something altogether different. Connected, but different, right? The next page, please. So when Bharata Muni was talking about so this is something that I have placed because I wanted to break away from only using female facial expressions, and I just came across this. I've also mentioned the credit. I thought this was lovely, something different to see, at least from the Indian cultural perspective, portraying the Navarasas with masculine gestures, right? So when the Nati Shastra was being written and Bharata Muni, this is a little bit of a story, was assigned the task of doing so, he had made um, or perfected the ideas of attraction, Shingara, peacefulness, wonderment, compassion, fear, rage, valor, and disgust, right? Um, yeah, I said that one too early. So he had made up the segregations for attraction, wonder, fear, compassion, rage, valor, disgust, and laughter. But then something was missing, and that's when the calmness and the peace was brought in, right? Why is this story important? Is because we believe that there are 8 raw emotions, 6 raw emotions that all of us are born with, but the seventh and eighth, which is the disgust and the shanta, or the calm or the peace, right? It is evoked from the thought that when you witness somebody being peaceful and calm, it brings a sense of grounding in your own sense of being, right? A very profound thought done way back, right? Thank you, Eric. That will be enough. So we'll probably have to look at that screen once again when we do our activity. But when we are talking about the explanation to the rasa effect, depicting an emotion to the audience and enabling or having the audience to witness the experience of their emotion. The key word is there, which is the emotion of what I feel. If I wanted to talk about a brave bird filled with compassion, I said the story the way I said it. But if I believe that this is a bird, and if I had said something like, little bird was going from here to there and here to there and was so tired, but it still kept going. She wouldn't give up, you know? Right? A sense of weight to my body is making what are the thoughts that when I'm doing and pulling it down? I'm doing this, a very suggestive thing. So what does it invoke?
Feels like saying, oh, poor thing.
I know, right? Oh, poor thing, she doesn't know her limits. Somebody talk to her about boundaries, self-love maybe, and the aspect of pulling her whole valor down, her whole bravery down. Yeah. Yeah. It's heavy, right? The same story can be said differently if I believe in the story differently and I want the emotion to be different, right? By just changing the way I bring in, because all of you suggested, you like the way that is went because it was done with the intention, right? But the emotion that I felt for the bird, the connectedness that I felt for her bravery was so much more profound that it came across exactly that way I wanted to. Had I chosen to do it like, it would probably bring in a different emotion as you are listening to it. This is just one odd of an example. So here is a mind body secret. The emotion, and probably this is an answer for Anis's reflection as well, is very simply put, the connection between the thoughts and the actions actually is key to build a cohesiveness between the storyteller, the audience, and the story itself. It's magical, right? And there is a science that backs this theory. Science says that brain registers emotion only when it interprets in what it sees. So if the brain is feeling an emotion, it's going to register that. And if it's not, right now, if you're not going to make a connection with what I'm yapping, it's going to be, right? It's not going to register. This is neuroscience. Neurologically, we are made that way that if I emotionally connect with that particular bird, I'm going to love the way that people are talking about the bird. If I make an emotional connect with a particular person, I am going to keep watching the way they walk, they talk, they make a connection. And this happens even generally, right? Um, okay. So let's just say that, what happens when you see your child or your pet? What is the action or what is the thought that comes to your mind? Probably a lot of parentliness, right? A lot of love. There's a smile, there's a connection, and immediately your eyes light up. You're probably going forward, making a connection, right? And when it happens with somebody else, right, you probably back off. So science says this, okay, this is a bit off, but I'm just want to say it because it just makes so much sense here. Is that so when we are meeting people whom we know and we already have a connection with, or whom with we have a very warm relationship, our bodies open vertically, which is why there's a hug, there's a high five, there's a right? But when we meet people officially, okay, the body opens horizontally, which is why there's a handshake, there's a hi, or there's a namaste, right? Or there's a bow. It's a horizontal. You see that? So science says how the body behaves with emotion is when there is somebody who expresses and has an immediate emotional connection, it's all right. But when you are meeting with somebody not for the first time also, but generally on a very official way, you probably will open up your body horizontally. And this is something that you can observe. I'm not saying it. The body-based science says it. So this is something that you can observe probably even in your associations. And this is something that we can teach in terms of body language, even to young learners, right? A lot of my sessions, especially with children, I love to play around with how they use their bodies in my creative movement classes. And one of the things that we do is meeting an elephant, right? Meeting Chota Bheem, a very interesting character in India, a cartoon character, right? Meeting mom, meeting teacher, meeting principal. And I love to see the way their body changes in response to this. That's exactly what the emotion and action, this is exactly what I'm going for. So the mind body secret is if if the thought is struck in David as I'm telling him the story, it's going to invoke the rasa, the navarasa in a way that I would like to. The emotions, the happy, the fear, the disgust, the sad, the compassion, on and so forth, right? And then his body makes a connection with my telling and then the action, right? So like what I was just telling Anis, it's a whole circle. It's a whole new effect. All right, so I'm just going to try something out here. And let me just see how many people do we have on time. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Only 5 people on video. So I'm not, Eric, probably not breakout room. And I'm just going to be using the general room for this, right? Okay, thank you. This is very helpful. Okay, so what we want to do here is each of us have a story to tell. It could be anything, right? A small little story that you would like to share with the group today, right? But what I would really like you to do is to tell it in an emotion that is the opposite of what you want it to be. So if it was the story of the bird, and I just kind of demonstrated, I'll help you with that, David. I'm just going to send you across something that I have written, an article which I published, and I'm going to send that across to you. All right? Okay. Yeah, so we're gonna play a bit with the action emotion by kind of counteracting to it, right? And I just would like you to, any small story, anything that you would like to, not a very long one, but a story that has been told multiple times from your culture or not, but like to challenge it in a way by making a connection by actually countering it. So if it's a story about compassion, I would like you to probably use aggression or fear as you're telling it and see how your body is telling the story. Treat it as a workshop, not as an audience. Okay, you're just trying something new. All right, I can see Eric looking at me saying, let me think. Or maybe you're just thinking of stories, Eric.
So this should be a folk tale?
It could be anything. Any
Well,
short story. That's the only request.
Can it be an event from my life?
Absolutely. A personal experience story is always welcome, but the opposite. So if it's something, yeah, you got that. I just want to play around. Yes, David, go ahead.
Shall I try telling the story now?
Yes, please. Of course.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll try. I've never done this before. That'll be interesting. Okay, it's a little story I learned from a girl called Banan in Gaza. Okay, here we go. Once there was a really angry bear, and this bear was so angry, it was so hungry, and it went into the pantry to get some honey. Oh, there's no honey there. Oh, the bear was furious, absolutely steaming. He thought, well, I'm gonna get some honey somewhere. So, you know what he did? He ran as fast as he could into the forest to look for some honey. And when he reached a big tree and there were bees flying around and he could smell the honey, he was so hungry he jumped up to try to get the honey. And a little bee, shall I continue? Do you want to hear this really challenging to do it in the opposite emotion? I think it's enough, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. If you feel so, but I really want to, before I go, I want to know what we spoke a lot about connectedness. We spoke a lot about the circle. I want to know. I want to hear what the people here think about it. It was hard. There was this. Yes, it was hard.
It's really hard. I was very consciously trying to do an opposite emotion. I was really focusing on emotion to the way I would normally tell that story, because I'd be embodying this very impatient and angry bear who's running and then trying to do it with humor and serenity was incredibly counterintuitive.
Yeah, but I do have something to share at the part where, but I'll kind of hold on. I just want to hear what others felt. I mean, this is an exercise.
I think the filter that you spoke about, the way the mind already filters information that you, don't know. I think that comes to play here like 100%.
Because, yeah. Did you feel that?
I could really feel that. Of course, it is
Absolutely.
challenging because the mind has already filtered it, and it's so hard to then, yeah,
Yeah,
put it
it
back in
was,
my
yeah,
mind.
absolutely. It was like seeing a badly edited movie, right? Exactly, right? A choreography which was absolutely taking parts of people's life and not weaving it together. Sherry is laughing. Yes. But yes, it was hard, but that was the intention of the exercise. But what I wanted to tell you, David, and thank you so much for participating and being the person to do this and volunteering to do this. But what I really would want to say is I tried my best to make a connection when your voice softened in search of honey in the forest. But then it was chaotic for me because I could absolutely not connect with what this bear was doing, right? Right? So, David, can you tell us the story the way you would want to talk or you would want to tell exactly the point that you have told us? Can you do that for us?
There was once a bear, a very hungry bear, and Mr. Bear went to the cupboard. There was no honey. Oh, I want some honey. I want some honey now. Bear ran out into the forest as fast as he could. There was a buzzing swarm of bees. Ah, there's a hive. I'm going to get that honey. And Bear leapt up to try to catch some of that honey from the hive. But
Thank you so much, David. Thank you so much. So, any thoughts on this? Because you are the one to give your thoughts earlier.
Well, it just comes across, the motion and the emotion have a connect, and of course, I, as an audience, I think I get the intended effect of the frustration of the bear and his hunger. Like he's having, yeah,
Yeah,
he's hangry as well. Like you can see that.
absolutely. And this was the first time I actually could visualize that there was after all a shelf.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah, and you said the same thing earlier, but I just could not relate with, and I could not even make the picture or visualize the image of a bear, this big, small, little one. I was struggling with it, but just wanted to know what the audience thought about it. So that's absolutely. Thank you so much for participating. Yes, we have a hand up, Priyanka. Please go for it.
Yeah, this is quite funny because last time I wanted David to stop, and now I wanted David to go on and on and on, and I wanted to hear the full story.
I mirror that. It was pretty chaotic, but it came through. The teller or the narrator's emotion, he himself was feeling chaotic. That's what he said. He was finding struggling. And that comes across with the way we portray, right? But that's exactly what this whole workshop was about, to bring in or suggest, or at least seed the thought of I tried to bring in a lot of my content, and that this is the time that I can tell you a lot of my content is from borrowed concepts, are borrowed from the book called Wired for Story. This is by Lisa Krohn, and I have also built in a lot of concepts from this amazing book that I would absolutely suggest to anybody. It's called What Everybody is Saying. It's by Joe Navarro, a former FBI agent, and he has some amazing insights on how the bodies tell stories. Yeah, and he kind of talks about using the body to tell the story, right? So Eric introduced me to this concept of their story, and the story. So I kind of like that, the story, the real story of what happened. So it talks about that. So a lot of this is from both of these. The concepts are from there. I've tried to kind of bring in a bit of the mind body science behind it. I'm happy to share notes of this workshop with anybody who's interested. And this, I think, is a area. So we are all storytellers, parents, educators who use stories in any of our works that we do. but using storytelling as a therapeutic aspect to express and also immerse, being it as an immersive experience is something that is, I think, a bit underserved, at least in the facilities that I work in my culture and in my surrounding. And that's something that I would encourage all of us to do. So with that thought, I think I would like to close my workshop. If you have any sharing or suggestions, please go. Yes, David, go for it. Yeah.
Um, I just really wanted just to comment on that exercise. I mean, I'd love to see someone else do what I just tried. But one thing that I work a lot with people who are developing themselves as storytellers, teachers, for example, and often teachers might be quite inhibited about expressing themselves, or not just teachers, but people. And what I did there, when you told me to tell the story in tune with the emotion of the story, or to matching, is I told the story in a very physical and dramatic way, in such a way that I might do with children, but I was certainly doing it in a very exaggerated way. So much more as if I was acting out the story,
Right.
and not necessarily how I would tell the story. And what I do when I'm working with people who are learning about storytelling is I will always encourage people to exaggerate, to go too far, to go way too far, to be totally over the top, and then to rein it in, and then to come back to the small, the micro, and then to find somewhere in that spectrum between the very minimalist physicalization and the totally over the top dramatization, and find that space on that spectrum that
Yeah.
is right for you at that moment with that story. So what I was doing there when I retold it is not really how I would tell it, but I think it's a very useful exercise. And I love the idea of going counter to the emotion, because in a way that's a game. And I think games, drama games, because I'm an actor as well, theatre games are a brilliant way of actually exploring possibility, because
Yeah,
often
and
we
challenging. Yeah.
constrain ourselves into narrow spectrums.
Yes, 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 that's the excellent thought. Yes. But there's this one thing that I would, when the first part of it, the motion emotion effect, the micro and the macro movements, what I really would suggest is, especially while working in a training setting, my two pence on this is sometimes is that when we want to tell or teach storytelling in the way that we would do it, it sometimes is very startling for another person's body, because imagine working in an inclusive school. So that's going to be, very difficult for a child who is probably having, in the spectrum, or an ADHD child, so on and so forth. So, but the big portion of making the connection is the emotion. So if I can justify even with a simple movement like the one that you just pointed out, right? Ronnie's did the, it's suggesting, but it's not emphatic in a way. Yeah. But I probably do that when I was I am in an in-person setting, emphatic, with a lot of emphasis on what I would love to tell or the way I would love to tell. That's what I think is the connection. And yes, this particular game was a risk. I must um, I must say that I haven't tried this before in a virtual setting, and I was definitely very unsure about this one. But then, thanks to you, a personal thank you note from me. Thanks, David, for participating. Yes, this was a challenge. Yeah.
Would you tell us another story, Smita?
Uh, I think I'm mindful about the time. It's already 6:20.
We have
So we are
9 minutes. We have 9 more minutes.
all right. Okay, so I'm ready with the story if everybody is happy to listen to one. All right. Thank you. Okay, I am going to be So this was definitely a part of the workshop, but I was mindful of the time. I'm going to tell a story about a folk tale, but a real life incident from India. This is Hirkani's story. Hirkani, 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 Hirkani's story. Hirkani was a single mother. She lived in a little village outside of the big fort which the emperor Shivaji was ruling. So, where's this big fort built on top of a hillock? And right down the hillock is this village which had milkmaids, the workers, the marketplace, and the entire establishment was here. Hirkani lived in this small little village which was just next to this huge fort built on a hillock. Being a single mother, she had to work. She had a beautiful 6-month-old baby. Today, in the modern day, if you would like to visit Raigad, the fort, you would have to take a ropeway to reach the fort. Imagine in the 16th century, she used to trek the mountain path and then reach the gate, which was also known as the Mahadwar or the main entrance. Wait at the gate for her turn for the guards to let her in. That time being a time when there were when there were lots of conflicts and a lot of war, there was very high security. So the ruler, Shivaji Maharaj, had made a unchangeable rule that in the morning the gates would open, and at this particular time during sundown the gates will come closed, and when the sun is up the gates are going to be open. So sun up, gates open; sundown, the gates close. This was a rule that was unchangeable. This was any usual day when Hirkani had milked all the cows in the village, and she had taken it up, walked all the way barefoot, reached the gate, the main big entrance, waited for her turn, gone through all the security checks. There were no metal detectors then, so the whole security check has happened. The guards have seen what her goods are, and they have let her in, and she has entered the big fort where all of the fort residents used to come and buy milk from her. That particular day, just while nearing sundown, there was a frantic maid who came from the palace and said, Harkani, Harkani, do you have milk? Harkani said, yes. She said, can you right away come with me? The queen is calling you. And Harkani said, but it's sundown. I need to go back. My child. Harkani's child was taken care by the neighbor. Now, they had an understanding that Harkani would give the neighbor all the unsold milk as payment. And the neighbor would stay with this child the whole day. But as once Harkani reaches home at sundown, the neighbor has to leave for her own chores. Many days, the neighbor lady didn't even wait for her. It was a struggle. On that particular day, Harkani said, but it's going to be sundown. I need to be home, my little child. But the maid from the palace said, you're going to be getting 2 gold coins, she said. 2 gold coins? I'm just going to be saving so much money. I can do so much for my little baby and myself. We could have a better life, she thought. So she said, okay, let me take a risk. And then she looks up and sees, okay, the sun is quite up, right? There's no watches at that time. So, and then she goes on to the palace and she gives the milk, and there the palace treasurer takes a long time in giving her the 2 gold coins. Probably has a lot of things to attend to. And once she receives the 2 gold coins, she runs frantically to get out of the gates, but the gates are closed and the guards wouldn't budge. But she said, "Look, the sun is not down yet." But the guard said, "Some part of the sun is down, it's sundown." But she said, "No, but the edge of the sun." By the time they argued about this, Harkini had actually lost the sundown. The guards didn't budge. But she knew what she could do. There was a child waiting for her. There was a child who was hungry. There was a child which needed her milk. There was a child which needed her safety. All of the maternal instincts came in. What if an animal comes in and takes away my child? What if there is an earthquake? What if something falls on my child? What if the neighbor sleeps? What if she leaves? What if she doesn't care about my child? This has happened before. All of these thoughts, very unhelpful, but they do creep into the human mind. She resolved that it doesn't matter whatever happens, I need to get back to my child. Unfortunately, that particular fort in Raigad, which today we have to reach using ropeway, had on the other side of it a full cliff. No enemy would want to climb that cliff because it was not climbable by any human or animal. But Harkani had decided that she is definitely going to get back home to her child. So off she went and jumped up to the wall of the palace. And then when she saw down, she could see nothing but darkness. She thought to herself, it's good I'm not able to see because this way I'm not scared. So putting her back and resting her back to the wall and very, very slowly and steadily creeping her way out down, Harkani faced a lot of challenges. She slid somewhere, a thorn poked her somewhere, the stone rumbled down, and it took her a long, but she reached her home as she had planned. And when she did, she saw that her child was sleeping peacefully. Her intent of reaching the child happened. The next day, when the sun rose again, guess what happened? The doors opened again. The gates were open, and then Harkani was there with her milk and her goods to sell in the fort. Looking at her, the guards got doubtful. They said, "We didn't let you out. How did you get out?" And she says, "I climbed down the wall." They said, "Impossible. How could you do that?" And then one thing led to another, and they called her an imposter. They said she's a spy. She's been trained to do this. We need to know how she got out. It's a breach of security. And then they catch hold of her and take her to the king, Shivaji Maharaj. And he's sitting in his throne and he's listening to the whole story. And he looks at Harkini. Her clothes are definitely tattered. Her hands are totally bloodied. Her legs have got so many scratch wounds, and there are sticks still stuck on her hair. And yet she was there, held by 2 huge guards, a frail woman, with the intention of just getting away. And then when Shivaji Maharaj heard the whole story, he told, "One of the first things I need to tell you is a thank you. Number one, because of you, now we know that there where we thought nobody can come in and infiltrate, we need to build a wall." So he thanks Harkani for that. And he rewards her, and he rewards her with a lot of gold that she could ever dream of. And the icing on the cake is definitely that even to this day, that particular wall is called as the Hirkani's wall. And it still is there in the Raigad fort. That's the end of my story, and I'm sorry I'm a minute over my time. Thank you so much for this wonderful, wonderful session. I had such a great time being a part of this. And I do hope that all of you enjoyed it as much as I did.
Thank you so much. And your expressions, your gestures were very interesting. I especially liked it when that woman said, when she was frantic, she said, "Come, come, you've got to give the milk."
Yes.
There were many moments like that where you acted out the character, sort of as the narrator. You were both the narrator and the character at the same time.
But the emotion that I had was of, I have to get to my child. And that the determination was what I was coming for. And I think that came off as well for all of the listeners. It's
Mhm.
emotion and emotion, emotion and motion effect. The circle goes on. Thank you, Eric. Thank you for your kind words. Thank you, everyone, for your kind thoughts
Thank
on
you
over
very
chat.
much. The workshop in motion and emotion.
Thanks, Eric.
That's a great phrase. Okay.